Every business owner I meet is trapped in the same cycle, answering the same questions over and over again, watching critical knowledge walk out the door when an employee leaves, and spending 80% of their day just fighting fires instead of growing their business. And you know what's crazy? It doesn't have to be this way. I've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of businesses, from legal practices to agencies to multi-location dental practices, and I've found that the difference between those that scale effortlessly and those that stay stuck comes down to just one thing. It comes down to them having a systemized single source of truth built on high quality documents that your team actually follows. In this video, I'm going to hand you the exact document template that's helped thousands of businesses using Waybook reduce their onboarding time by 80%, cut management overhead in half, and finally create the headspace to work on their business rather than in it. This isn't just some theory, this is the battle-tested system that transformed a 60-person marketing agency from operational chaos to clockwork consistency in just 30 days. Now, if you're ready to stop being the bottleneck in your own business, this, my friend, is for you. I'm Mike Banda, and I learned this lesson during one of my most challenging yet exciting periods in our businesses so far. We were scaling rapidly within Hopper HQ, we had new hires every month, our revenue was growing 300% year over year, but we were sort of drowning in our own success. Every decision, every process, every piece of critical knowledge lived either in my head or scattered across systems that nobody could navigate. Sound familiar? The breaking point for me came when our head of customer success had an urgent medical leave and took 6 months of client processes and knowledge with her. We scrambled to piece everything together of what her approach was, and we made some quite costly mistakes and nearly lost some major accounts. Now that's when I realized the brutal truth. Successful businesses don't fail because of bad products or tough markets. They fail because knowledge that makes them great stays trapped in people's heads instead of being systemized. What you're about to get is the complete framework that solved this permanently. The same system that's helped hundreds of businesses transform their chaos into competitive advantage. Now, you clicked on this video because you want an SOP template, and that's exactly what I'm going to give you. But here's what most people don't realize. What you probably think of as an SOP is what we call a document in Waybook. And this isn't just terminology, it's fundamentally a better way to organize your business knowledge, particularly for small, medium, growing businesses. Most businesses create SOPs that are either too narrow, like how to send an email, or too broad and overwhelming. Whereas what you actually need are complete workflow documents that guide your team through the entire processes from start to finish. And that's what this template creates. Now, see that structure? That is what we're building today. It's your SOP template that actually works in the real world. Each of these documents then contains multiple sections of our 7-part template. Now, here's a key guideline of whether to create one or multiple documents. Really, you only want to create separate documents when a particular workflow crosses clear responsibility handoffs. Now, if Sarah handles customer complaints from start to finish, then it can be one document, one SOP. Whereas if Sarah handles initial complaints but then hands complex ones to Marcus in legal, then those can become 2 separate documents. Most businesses either create massive documents that overwhelm people or fragments that force treasure hunts across your system. And this template creates that perfect middle ground so everybody can stay focused. This 7-section template works whether you're documenting a simple workflow or a complete process with multiple steps and multiple handoffs. Now, we're going to build this together using customer complaint resolution, so a complete workflow that every business would typically need systemized. Whether you're a law firm, whether you're a marketing agency, a retail business, you normally need a systemized way to handle those complaints. So let's create one that actually works. Now, if you're creating this alongside with me, I encourage you to think like a trainer, not a writer. The question isn't, how can I explain everything? But rather, what procedures does my team need to follow in order to achieve those consistent outcomes? Now, let's begin. Section 1 is purpose and scope. Every document should start with clarity. Why does this workflow exist? Who should use it? And when should they use it? This isn't a bureaucratic overhead. This is actually the foundation that determines whether your team actually adopts what you're creating. Here's how you write this section. Start with one simple sentence. This document ensures, you can put your specific outcome, by providing specific procedures for specific people or in specific situations. Now, for our customer complaint example, this document ensures that every customer complaint is resolved professionally and efficient by providing clear escalation procedures and response standards for all customer-facing team members. You see how that works? The outcome, the procedures, and the audience. Now, here's what this looks like in practice. Sarah gets a complaint email at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Instead of panicking or waiting until Monday, she opens a document, follows the 2-hour response procedure, and the client feels heard before the weekend. Simple, clear, no confusion about whether this applies to their situation or not. But here's where most people stop, and it can be a mistake. In this section, we want to make this visually engaging, and you can of course use Waybook's formatting tools to help you. So consider using things like block quotes to highlight your main purpose statement. It immediately signals importance to anybody that's just scanning the document. You can of course add emojis to categorize the document type, because these small visual cues can help people process information about 65% faster. Now, what we want to do to this section is we want to add the scope, using numbered lists to show priority and sequence. So this might be what's included, what's not included, when do you use this versus when you use other documents. This prevents the endless questions like, what happens in this situation, that often can derail the implementation. So for our customer complaint resolution document, we can say this applies to all written and verbal complaints. It covers complaints up to $5,000 in value, and higher values can be escalated to management. And we can also say it does not cover product returns, see separate returns document. So essentially we end up with clarity, because if your team doesn't understand why the procedures matter, they'll just simply shortcut them in the moment when they feel busy. The purpose of this section isn't just information, it is clarity and to provide motivation. Okay, let's move to section 2, and this is our workflow overview. Rather than getting lost in detailed procedures right away, start with the bigger picture. So we want to be answering the question of what are the key stages of this workflow process or procedure? How do they flow together, and what are the key decision points? For our customer complaint resolution document, our overview might say the initial complaint is received and logged, the complaint is assessed and categorized, resolution attempted by frontline staff, escalation if needed, resolution implemented and customer follow-up, and then the complaint is analysed for improvement opportunities. These aren't detailed procedures yet, it is the roadmap that helps people understand how their specific tasks fit into the bigger picture. In Waybook, you can create simple numbered lists and visual separators to make this more scannable and clear. And you can even link to other related documents if needed. So this can be a list, it can be a flowchart, or even a video, whatever you think best works for your type of workflow and your team. Now let's move to section 3. This is detailed procedures. These detailed procedures are the heart of your document, and there is a specific way to structure it that can make all the difference. The golden rule is every procedure step should contain at least 2 different types of content. This could be a text and bullet points, or an image and an explanation, or a video and supporting notes. Why? Because people learn differently, and mixing that format can actually keep people much more engaged. Every procedure can get numbered, and every procedure can include the expected outcomes. Every procedure that takes longer than 5 minutes, we recommend that you just put a time estimate on it. So for this part of the process, instead of just saying contact the customer, we can write to contact the customer within 2 hours using the complaint acknowledgement template, and you can actually link to that within your document. We can then say the expected outcome. The customer confirms receipt and feels heard. And within that, we can put the time estimate of 5 minutes to do that task. We can then have the Q&A of what if a customer doesn't respond? Well, in that case, we follow up with a phone call using the backup contact details in the CRM. Now, if you see the difference here, the first version leaves room for interpretation and error. The second version gives your team confidence and clear success criteria. For our complaint resolution document, detailed procedures might include things like the procedure 1 is our initial response within 2 hours. Use the complaint acknowledgement template, log the complaint in the CRM with the right category and priority, assign the complaint reference number, and send the confirmation email to the customer. Procedure number 2 within this workflow can be investigation. That can be done within 24 hours. Review customer history and previous interaction, consult with relevant department if needed, document findings in complaint record, and determine the right resolution approach. Now here's where content creation gets powerful within Waybook. For complex procedures, don't just describe, show. You can have screenshots of the exact CRM screens to complete, And you can actually create these in seconds by using Waybook shots to automatically record your SOPs as you do the task. So a quick screen recording of the investigation process or photos and examples of properly completed documentation will really help uplift these documents. You can also use Waybook's call-out boxes for warnings or important tips. A warning emoji, a caution sign, a light bulb can suggest those opportunities for optimization. And for detailed information that might overwhelm the main flow, you can put these in collapsible sections. All technical details can there be then when they're needed, but they're essentially hidden so people can really just focus on the basics. So now that you have the purpose and scope, the workflow overview, and the detailed procedures, section 4 is about the tools, the resources, and the links. This section is essentially your team's toolkit. Every template they need, every link to the software, every example of the excellent work they can strive for, and every resource that makes the procedure smooth and efficient. But here's what makes this section powerful within Waybook. You don't just list the resources, you can make them instantly accessible and actionable through either internal linking, web embeds, or file attachments. So, focusing back on our customer complaint resolution document, the templates can be the complaint acknowledgement email, the resolution confirmation template. We can have systems that link directly to the CRM complaint login section, customer history dashboard. You can have examples like sample complaints resolution for different scenarios, escalation contacts, so these might be internal links to manager contact details and escalation procedures. Instead of just mentioning use the acknowledgement template, you can write the detailed procedure of how they use what. Use the complaint acknowledgement template for all initial responses, and you can actually embed that below. This is where Waybook's internal linking can become really powerful. So rather than copying and pasting information so it's everywhere, you can create connections with different documents within your knowledge base. So if your complaint resolution references your returns document, instead of just duplicating that information, just simply link to it. This keeps information authoritative and current, and where the returns document changes, everything stays in sync automatically. For resources that need to be used immediately, like templates or scripts or checklists, you can actually embed them directly within Waybook or attach them to the document. Your team can access, copy, and use them without even leaving the workflow that they're doing. Now, a marketing agency I work with reduced their campaign setup time by 40% just by making everything one click away from the document that shares that process. Now, section number 5 are your quality standards. Here's where we define what good and great looks like. Because if your team doesn't know the standard, they'll normally create their own, and trust me, their standards may not be the same as yours. This section has 3 main parts: success criteria, common pitfalls, and verification steps. But the way you present this information determines whether your team will actually use it. Success criteria needs to be specific, measured, but also visually distinct. Use numbered lists to show the priority and the sequence. So client feels confident is vague. Instead, we can say client confirms next steps via email within 24 hours. That's specific and measurable. For common pitfalls, use call-out boxes and warning icons. These visual cues immediately signal pay attention here without requiring people to read everything to find the important warnings. Sometimes it is better explaining what not to do for 5 minutes rather than spending 5 hours fixing the things that have slowly gone wrong. Finally, we have the verification steps, ensuring quality without micromanaging. Instead of checking every piece of work yourself, you create checkpoints where team members verify their own work, or if appropriate, you can have peer reviewing of each other. Now present these as interactive checklists, which you can do within Waybook, so people can actually check off items as they complete them. Again, here's where content creation becomes really powerful, because instead of just describing what good looks like, show it. Include the screenshot of properly completed work. Record quick videos demonstrating the right technique. Make sure that those examples are downloadable so people can reference them whilst they're working. Section 6 is FAQ. This section anticipates the questions before they're being asked. And this is where you can capture all of those "but what about when" scenarios that come up in real life. But here's the key: you don't have to try and answer every possible question. You focus on the questions that actually do come up repeatedly. So I would recommend starting with 5 to 7 common scenarios and just add them to this section, which you can continue to optimize over time. For each FAQ, provide both the answer and the context for that answer. So for example, what if a client wants to change the scope? That can get answered with a process and the reason behind why they're doing that. Now, within Waybook, you can use the collapsible sections for detailed troubleshooting information, and this solves the common content dilemma where you need comprehensive details available, but it shouldn't be overwhelming visually when people just need to know the basics. The detailed answers are only shown when they need to be shown, and the rest of it can stay neatly hidden away. Now, this actually becomes your team's troubleshooting guide, because instead of calling you or their manager every time something unusual happens, they can check the FAQ, and when they do find a new scenario, they can then document that for the next person. Now, as well as listening out for those questions, you can also use Waybook reports to see the questions that people are asking within Waybook, and then you can simply integrate that within your knowledge. And finally, section 7 is knowledge reinforcement and testing. Now we have amazing documents, we do still need to remember the goal is ultimately to transform that information into retained knowledge, which we can do through reinforcement and assessment. Now, Waybook's AI can help transform any document into a complete training module instantly. With a click of a button, it will read the document, prioritize the most important things to test your team on, and automatically create questions and quizzes to ensure that your team has not just seen, but they've understood that piece of information. The number of questions can scale with the length of the content, and the AI ensures a balanced coverage across all of the key topics. Now, essentially, this transforms any of your documents into genuine training materials that builds confidence and confirms the understanding. For processes requiring more formal acknowledgement, you can actually also use a knowledge confirmation step to provide an additional layer of tracking so people can confirm, accept, or agree to a certain procedure or standard. This gives you the audit trails and ensures critical information is properly acknowledged across your team. The combination of engaging content plus more formal assessments creates a training experience that are both effective and trackable, ensuring that your team doesn't just access information, but truly absorbs and applies it. Now you've seen what a proper document looks like, before we look at how you can implement this, let me just show you why most businesses never get close to this level of systemization. Because if you're making any of these 3 mistakes, then even the best template in the world unfortunately won't save you. Mistake number 1 is having scattered information across multiple platforms. If your sales procedures live in one system and your delivery standards live in another and training materials in a third, then when somebody needs to understand how something works, they're playing treasure hunt across multiple digital systems. I've worked with a law firm recently which did brilliant legal work, about $3 million in annual revenue, but they had client procedures in SharePoint, case processes in Google Drive, other templates in Teams, and half of their client management approach just lived in their partner's head. So when they calculated it, their associates were spending about 12 hours a week asking questions that should have been documented once and then referenced forever. So that's real money that they were losing in billable time. And if you think about your own business, think about all the different places that your knowledge might keep and the inefficiencies that create, that is what we're looking to solve. So if it's in more than one place, then you're already bleeding time and money. Mistake number 2 is knowledge staying trapped in people's heads. Your best employee knows exactly how to handle that tricky client situation, but when they go on holiday or decide to take leave, that knowledge just walks out the door with them. Mistake number 3 is having inconsistent formats and approaches to your documentation. One person might write a step-by-step instruction, another creates a flowchart, somebody else records a video with not much structure, and your team just ends up with a random collection of stuff that may be helpful if they can figure out how to use it. And this creates what I like to call format fatigue. People just ultimately stop trying to find the answers because trying to find the answers is just much harder than asking you directly, and then you're back to being the bottleneck in your business. Luckily, this template that we've just covered solves all 3 of these problems by creating one centralized, consistently formatted approach to capturing any workflow in your business. So now we've got the template, we know the mistakes to avoid. How can we actually implement this and get it across our business? Because here is where most businesses make a critical mistake. The mistake is that they try to document everything at once. They create this into a massive project that takes months, it burns out their team, and usually gets abandoned halfway through. Do not do that, my friend, do not do that. Start with what you think are the most critical workflows. And here's the shortcut. What are the 3 processes that, if done wrong, can cost you the most amount of time and money? For legal practices, it's usually something like your client intake, your case handoffs, or your billing procedures. For marketing agencies, it's campaign launches, client reporting, and scope management. And for manufacturing, it's quality control, safety procedures, and equipment maintenance. Now, once you've got the first draft of those three, you can just iterate to make sure that they're working perfectly and let your team experience and feel the difference that it makes to their work. And then, of course, expand from those three. Now, here's exactly how to do this, and the same approach that we use in Waybook's Teams workshops to help businesses implement systematically. We typically encourage businesses to do this over a 4-week process. Week 1 is to pick your first workflow and map it out. Don't write the full document yet, just identify each of the steps from the start to the finish, essentially your overview, which is in your 3rd section of the template. Involve the people that actually do this work, and they'll catch the different things that you'll miss and also bring buy-in into the system because they can see that it's going to change the way they work. Now, here's the game-changing tip. If you're documenting a workflow that you personally perform, use automated capture tools. I mentioned before you can use Waybook Shots, which will automatically capture the screenshots and create that step-by-step instruction as you perform the process on your computer. This can really easily transform that tribal knowledge into documented procedures instantly, so no more trying to remember and recreate that process. Week 2 is then writing down those full documents using the rest of the template we've covered. Now, this can include one person from your team in that process, and their job is really just to poke holes in it, ask the questions, and make sure that nothing is confusing. You can apply the content creation principles we discussed earlier, like mixing the content type, using visual hierarchy, and making resources available. Then the 3rd week of the process is to test the document. So have someone who doesn't normally do this workflow to try and do the work, follow the documentation. And you can just watch where they get stuck and easily jump back in, recalibrate and fix the way you're sharing that information. Remember, iteration beats perfection every single day. So rather than trying to create flawless content before your team sees it, publish it, get a working version and gather that real feedback. And then finally is week 4, where you can roll this out to your full team, train everybody on the new workflow, collect that feedback and make those improvements. Your team can quickly tell what's unclear, what's missing, and actually what works well. Now, you might be thinking, Mike, my business is far too unique for templates, but I must tell you, that's what every business owner thinks before they realize that they can just change the critical information and feel that increased onboarding time and the consistency across the business. So now we've been through this 4-week process, you can of course then just repeat this to your next critical workflow, and I promise you it gets much faster as you go. Now, this phased approach can work because your team sees the immediate value on the small things that you're focusing on, but you don't have to just do one at a time. Even if you compress this timeline, I still recommend you go through these 4 steps, but of course you can do that on each day or do multiple procedures, multiple workflows and documents at each stage of those weeks. Either way, you're not waiting months for some theoretical improvement. You and your team are experiencing the better results within weeks. Imagine walking into your office or going on vacation knowing that every critical process runs without you. Your team solves problems independently, new hires get productive in days, not months, and you finally have time to focus on strategy instead of firefighting. The key is centralization. All of your documents need to live in one place with the same format and the visual hierarchy. Whether that's a simple shared drive, a wiki-style system, or a dedicated platform like Waybook, consistency really is everything. And here's something that most people miss. Build in a review cycle from the start. Processes change, procedures change, software updates, team members discover new ways of doing things. And if you don't actively maintain your documents, then they can easily become outdated obstacles instead of being useful guides. Now, Waybook can also handle this automatically with review reminders and version control, but you can also achieve the same result with a calendar reminder and a simple log of what's being changed. So there you have it. But remember, you created your business to create freedom, not to become trapped by it. The document template I've shared today is your first step towards recreating that freedom, systemizing your operations so you can focus on growth, not putting out those fires. I've seen this templated approach transform businesses across many different industries. A recruitment agency that went from a chaotic candidate management system to strategic excellence in a couple of weeks. A software company that transformed their remote team coordination to deliver their best quarter ever. And the best part, you can start implementing this today. If you want to take this even further and create the business playbook that gives your team everything you need to succeed without consistently coming to you, click the first link in the description below. You'll get instant access to the complete document toolkit, including the template we've covered today. Your business deserves to run like clockwork, and your life deserves the freedom that comes with it. If you want to know more about the difference between processes, procedures, and SOPs, check out this video. And if this video was useful for you, then please feel free to hit like and subscribe if you want more practical systems like this. And until next time, I hope you enjoy some smooth scaling.